Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to our talk on leveraging classic human tactics in CTI investigations. So the phrase, it's so overt, it's covert, is actually a famous quote from Sherlock Holmes that describes a situation which seems so obvious that it ends up being overlooked. In our case, as CTI analysts, when we wonder what are our threat actors up to, the obvious solution might be, shall we just ask them? My name is Eliška. I'm a cyber threat intelligence specialist working for a company creating video games based in France. I'm intelligence analyst by education and by experience. I have some 8 years of experience in intelligence analysis field, 7 of these in CTI directly, mostly in private sector and mostly focused on adversary profiling.
And I'm Julian Mascaro. I work as a security and forensic investigator at the same gaming company as Eliška. Some of the times I do have the chance to support the CTI team, mostly for the fun stuff. So I'm good with that. I'm also an OSINT lecturer at 3 famous French universities since 2019. In my free time, I do love rock climbing, but also
yeah, we are keen on adrenaline sports, but also on spending time with our respective pets. We understood that there were some pet lovers in the public. And as you can see, our pets are super lazy.
And cute.
And so are we. Rather, we constantly think about how to make our CTI work easier. And today we decided to share some of these tips with you. First of all, disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely ours and do not reflect the official policy or position of anyone else or any organization. Second disclaimer, our viewpoint is the one of cyber threat intelligence operatives. By this, we mean that we are not veteran police interrogators. We are not national intelligence officers with 30 years of experience. We do not pretend to be ones. But we have found out that borrowing some of their techniques in our investigations makes our intelligence better. So this is the way that we want to talk about HUMINT today, and it is also our way of thanking these esteemed colleagues for their expertise, because our research stands on your shoulders. So without further ado, the agenda for the last talk of this summit. First of all, what's CyberHUMINT? Second, how to kickstart your CyberHUMINT operation in your organization. Third, focus on the crucial part of CyberHUMINT ops, which is handling sources. And finally, how to fit all of this into your CTI workflow. So let's dive in. CyberHUMINT Unpacked. For those who are unfamiliar with the term HUMINT, human intelligence, this is the traditional intelligence discipline, the oldest one actually, which involves gathering intelligence from human sources through human interactions. So this means that it relies a lot on trust, on personal connections that you have with your sources, and on certain degree of interpersonal skills. And let's say that on sliding scale from between a proactive and a reactive threat intelligence gathering, we are very much on the proactive side, on the side of active defense. CyberHUMINT, the same principle. We are in the realm of active defense, but we are online. You engage actively with your sources online. So this involves a few key differences compared to HUMINT. When you're online, you can better leverage online anonymity. You have better access to remotely located sources, but you need to focus all the more on OPSEC, operational security, which is absolutely crucial for this field. And a quick side note, when we talk about CyberHUMINT operation, just to make it short, we say ops. And so the kind of intelligence you collect in CyberHUMINT, there is a whole range of use cases. It can be getting access to malicious forum for better monitoring of your threat actors. It can be gaining intelligence on vulnerability, or even identifying insider threat. It is not only theory. We actually, each one of us has done a fair share of ops. Today we wanted to talk to you about one of the funnier ones. that played a pivotal role in our CTI investigation, and that concerned an adversary group that exploited actually a technical vulnerability in our user account feature, and also a human vulnerability in customer service of a company. We quickly realized that in this adversary group, there were two competing clans. So what we did in our ops is that we created two fictional identities. First one, overt, with which we approached source in the first clan and gained his trust and convinced him to become our informer from within the group. The second identity we used to approach source in the second clan. The identity was covered, and we pretended to be a newbie interested in the group's endeavor, and in the end managed to gain access to their private Discord. This was very helpful because once we were in the Discord and we could follow their conversations, we could explore how the group gets organized, what are their capacities, what are their motivations and methods. And we actually managed to get what we came for, which was the addressing priority intelligence requirement and collecting the intelligence on the vulnerabilities in question. We analyzed these vulnerabilities, we corroborated with our internal teams who confirmed the existence of these and patched it promptly. And in passing, in the very last phase, we used this opportunity for disrupting their ecosystem. We, for sure, identified some of the cybercriminals involved in activities against us for legal prosecution, but also since we were already in, we sowed chaos in their inner circle, and we actually turned the clans against each other. So they started accusing each other on snitching on each other mutually. They disbanded shortly after. Of course, we had a lot of luck in this ops, but we were also well prepared to use this luck.
So we had your curiosity. Now, hopefully, we will get your attention. So you want to kickstart this type of activity within your organization. There's 3 context points that you need to know for any organization that does not conduct this type of activity. There's really a limited amount of knowledge about CyberHUMINT. Even in cybersecurity departments where there's no competencies of people that have done that in the past, that have this background, it's important to raise awareness about the added value it can bring to your organization, to do this kind of lobbying work within the organization. Also, it's a risky business. So in companies that have a risk-averse culture, you need to explain what are the risks, to be fully honest about it, but you need to make sure that the people understood that you took all the precautions to mitigate those risks. Also, again, if you don't have the knowledge in hand, the competencies on hand, it's difficult to have a clear starting path. And that's why I want to show you a bit of tips of what we did in order to kickstart this type of activity.
So when you need to pitch CyberHUMINT ops in your organization, you should emphasize what they really are, a strategic advantage. CyberHUMINT adds depth and context to technical findings. It can actually make your intelligence more actionable for your stakeholders. The major added value of CyberHUMINT is that you understand better the human factor behind the cyber threat. So you have better insight into your adversary's way of functioning, which can be quite helpful for anticipating threats, especially if you follow adversary and you follow the evolution of the TTPs over the time. Anticipating threats means adjusting your threat detection measures, launching threat hunting initiatives, but also enhancing incident response, because when you have already ongoing security incident, it's good to know your adversary. It can help you mitigate the incident better. And last but not least, as we've illustrated with our use case, ops are quite useful since you're humanly present in the adversary's ecosystem. They are quite useful for countering adversary activity through triggering events, disrupting the ecosystem, or also makes easier the identification of adversaries for potential legal follow-up. In terms of course of action matrix, we are on the detect, disrupt and degrade, and deceive, destroyed phases. When you pitch CyberHUMINT Ops, it's very important and honest to also consider the risks. There are different kinds of risks. First of all, operational, of course, which basically comes back to compromise. It can be compromise of the operation, of the operator, or of your source that you have in the community. This can result in adversary retaliation. It can also result in a source providing intentionally deceptive intelligence. So we need to be careful about that. Legal risks. You should always ensure that ops are compliant and aligned with the legal framework governing cyber activities in your country. And these frameworks are not always mature, sometimes not even existing. So this is something that you need to make sure beforehand. You need to ask yourself questions such as, what is the acceptable level of engagement with threat actor? How to do it so that you're not actually accused of contributing to criminal activity. How about financial transactions? Do you pay to get access to some forum? How do you collect this kind of intelligence so it is legally admissible? And one maybe overlooked but important part of legal risks, labor law. Because when you conduct CyberHUMINT Ops, your operator can be working over working hours, outside of office hours. So you need to consider that too. Ethical risks. You are in the field of deception, elicitation, psychological manipulations. CyberHUMINT Ops somehow exploit human vulnerabilities. So you really need to consider this carefully and to understand clearly the boundaries, the ethical boundaries, and have solid operational frameworks for your ops. And finally, reputational. Again, in case your ops gets compromised, there can be a public backlash. There can also be unwanted attention attracted of your adversary. All of these risks, they can be addressed. You can deal with these, but you never should deal with them when the ops is already ongoing. This is something that you need to address beforehand. And finally, you should decide if you conduct these ops internally with your staff, with your tools, or if you outsource it partially or entirely. The advantage of doing ops internally is that you have really direct control over the whole process from A to Z. You can also customize it better to your PIR, to your specific sector, to your specific kind of activity. And you have better control over information flow in terms of confidentiality. On the other hand, if you conduct ops externally or if you outsource it, it can be more cost efficient. You can also mobilize specialized expertise of the vendor, of the intelligence provider, because for instance, if a Russian-speaking ecosystem is your main focus and you have no Russian speaker, tough luck. And think about scalability too, because when you manage to pitch and launch ops in your company, that's great news, but more ops you're going to conduct, more it can be difficult to keep it up.
So a basic step-by-step approach to launch this type of activity within your company. You need to first determine your needs. Depending on your sector, depending on the information you're looking for, you need to reflect upon the whole activity before launching anything and speaking about this desire to launch this activity. After that, you have to draft some documents. We'll talk about that a bit later. But the document will be the foundation of your activity in order that everything is transparent for everyone, especially in this line of work, in this activity that is kind of risky. You need to show that you really understood the process and reflected upon it. After that, you take those documents and start to discuss it with the stakeholders. It can be the cybersecurity department, but also the legal department, data protection officers, and even the communication department. Now it's time to be a bit more technical. You now start to develop the technical infrastructure designed to cover your operation. So it's VMs, fictitious identity. We won't go into details about this because there's plenty of literature online. But you need to develop really this type of infrastructure because it's OPSEC, well, it's the new mantra, it's really important. And now it's time for fun. You need to craft your first op, by defining the mission objectives and the source that you're going to approach. But let's focus on those documents. You know, as Europeans, we do love a good regulation. And we think it's important for operation to have a main central document. And here's the CyberHUMINT Ops policy. It will define the scope of your activity, the rules of engagement, the approval process for ops, who should be involved to approve this kind of mission, etc., etc. After that, the sock puppet management policy. For those of you who don't know what is a sock puppet, it's the fictitious identity that you will be using to approach your source online. How do you create accounts? How do you manage them? And also, how do you use them? After that, guidelines for your operations. Operatives in your team, in your CTI teams, may come and go. And you need to streamline the knowledge that you have acquired for that to be transmissible to everyone. So it can be about OPSEC, again, but also what is really important, it's about how you archive the communication that you've had with the threat actors. It needs to be really transparent for everyone, what you did during the ops, how did you talk to the person, etc. And finally, we talked about the stakeholders that are involved in the process. You need to make a presentation to make them understand that you thought about the process, to explain them what is the added value behind CyberHUMINT ops, what are the inherent risks, and what you did to cover those.
So after the documents, let's have some music. Here's a new playlist for you, or rather different tips on how to actually conduct and manage your sock puppets. First of all, the pretender. Sometimes when you create a sock puppet, you need only very simple social media account that is enough for the operation. But sometimes you need to create a more sophisticated sock puppet that has presence across different platforms. So always make sure that this persona has consistent backstory. Don't forget, you're just another brick in the wall. When you access some forums, some markets especially, threat actors set up the whole range of security triggers that can catch fake accounts, illegitimate accounts, such as yours, sometimes based on mobile verification or geolocation of your IP. So you need to make sure that you don't get there with your beautiful sock puppets and trigger these. Do the verification before. Staying alive. Posting, commenting, looking alive, your sock puppet must look credible, and it takes some time. So what I would recommend to you is to have 2-3 backup sock puppets actually that you enrich gradually over the time. So when you actually need to activate it for ops, they already have some history, so they look more credible. Under pressure, OPSEC again. You must be, as a human operator, super careful not to reveal your real identity. You must use the tooling to stay well hidden. So have VPN ranges dedicated to your investigation, separate virtual environments, separate devices even. Talk the talk. If you target a specific malicious ecosystem, be it culturally speaking, linguistically speaking, but also technically speaking, for instance, when you work in gaming sector, cheat malicious ecosystem is quite a specific one. You should learn the slang, the trends, and the quirks, so your sock puppet, your fictional identity looks credible. And in this case, do not hesitate actually to reach out to the experts, to your peers, be it in your company or your trusted peers across the community, to have this knowledge, to share this knowledge, and to enrich your sock puppet so it looks more credible. And finally, show must go on. Remember, we talked about scalability. More ops you're going to conduct, more sock puppets you're going to accumulate. So you need to know how to create them, how to grow them, and also when to ditch them. Don't let them gather dust when you're no longer using them. Get rid of this emotional burden. Like we did with our friend Todd. When you have more complex sock puppets, it's actually quite useful to have this kind of cheat sheet, to have this kind of legend that you have underhand when you conduct your ops. So Todd here, he's a customer relationship specialist in a cybersecurity company. Interesting target for threat actors. He lives in Alexandria, what a coincidence, and he also doesn't exist. And yet, He has quite a huge presence and digital footprint across different platforms. I'm sure you know tools such as Maltego for profiling threat actor infrastructure, for profiling threat actor presence, but bear in mind, they're useful all the same when you need to document your more complex sock puppets, like we did here with Todd.
So we've laid the ground foundations of what should be the activity of CyberHUMINT within your company. Now it's time to handle your first source and maybe avoid common mistakes, as we did. The profile of the operator is maybe pretty similar to what would be a HUMINT operator, meaning that for us it's important that this person has emotional knowledge and emotional intelligence. The empathy within a relationship with a threat actor is a highlight, because to elicit a conversation, the person needs to understand what are the trigger points of this person. Also, read the room, in quotation marks, it's the ability to understand social dynamics within a community. What are the relationships between the different people? For us, it's really important to have those kind of abilities. There's other capacities that we won't go into details, but you get the idea. Let's go hunting. To select your first source, you need to understand his motivations. Why would someone talk to you and give you information that is not willing to give? Also, what is the typology of the source you're trying to approach? Is it a direct threat actor already targeting your organization, or is it just a sympathizer that is within the community and maybe interacting with the threat actors? Maybe it's just an informed observer that is, well, gravitating towards this community. Also, the relevance to the objectives. Is the person you're trying to approach will have the correct information that you're looking for? And that's really important to think on that beforehand. Trust. Do you trust this person to give you the right information? Maybe this person will try to manipulate you. So you need to try to create that also during the relationship. The reach within the community. If it's not the direct threat actor, does this person will be able to get the information for you? Or maybe he knows someone that may get this information for you. And last, the accessibility. Is this person easily accessible? Because if you've talked to a threat actor directly, it might raise some eyebrows. So you might think about some rebound before directly talking to the person you're interested about. MICE. It's a framework that is well known in the intelligence community about the primary motivations behind why people would do something that they're not really willing to do. M stands for money, so it comes in many forms. Ideology, whether it's political beliefs, religious, or else. C for compromission or coercion. It's the dirty stuff that you have on someone, so for him to do something that he's not really willing to do. And ego, everybody has one. I just skipped the teaser. For the intelligent folks in the room, MICE, it's the known concept and maybe an outdated one, but well, we think it's an important concept to know as an introductory into this field. And with Eliška, we've came across individuals that just did it for the rules, meaning that they were not looking after anything specific, but they were just having fun discussing with us and giving us some information on their friend because they were playing the dual agent, and for them it was kind of the James Bond movie. So you might want to consider that.
It's called human tactics for a good reason. Tactics means that it's not exclusively natural skill. There's a learning curve. You can actually acquire that. And these are some points that you should have covered when you build your source. Lay the groundwork. Preparedness, super important. Before approaching your source, do your research, do your homework. What are the interests, hobbies, social media activity? You can leverage OSINT tools for that. When talking with your source, Use non-coercive techniques. This is very important. You can mobilize known HUMINT methodologies such as ORBIT, which is short for observation rapport-based interpersonal technique. It's actually methodology originating from intelligence and military contexts and emphasizes relationship building based on non-coercive techniques so that the source gives you information voluntarily and in a detailed and accurate way. Two other techniques that are quite known, I believe: incremental discourse, active listening. This can be basically summed up in a CyberHUMINT context as build trust, but don't push too hard. Show some active listening, be tuned in, let them lead the conversation because that makes them feel safer and also gives you more information. And mirror what they're saying. If their style is formal, stay formal. If they're chill, be chill. When you open the conversation, use the icebreakers. You did your research on your target, on your source, so keep it light and don't hesitate to add a little bit of humor, and why not gamification? When you tap into your social skills, think about empathy. Let the source know that you understand where they're coming from. And also be relatable, because in classic HUMINT, it was found out that rigid framework, interviewing framework with predetermined question impedes the rapport, impedes the relation. So be chill, be informal, and balance professionalism with relatability. And since you're online, leverage internet culture. Use memes, GIFs, trends. The last point is more important for long-term sources, covered sources that you cultivate in communities. It's important that you continue sustaining their interest, that you do follow up, that you show them appreciation, like show some love, let them know that you understand their importance, that you appreciate what they do. And do not ghost them, do not forget them. It can happen. It happened to us. It was very embarrassing. And Giuseppe66, if you're listening to this, we are very sorry.
Well, talking about relationships, sometimes, well, it ends. It's not always easy to end a relationship with a source, but there's few scenarios where it could happen. We've defined two basic scenarios, but there's plenty more. There's a soft scenario where you reach your objectives. The PR are filled, you obtain the information you were looking for, and now it's time for an end. So you need to find a pretext. Maybe you're moving abroad, switching jobs, but something to end the relationship, and so that the person doesn't have any, well, suspicions. And there's unfortunately a hard scenario where, well, you did not do your homework well. You get discovered, whether it is the fictitious identity that you are using, or maybe the operator's identity. That can happen too, but we won't go into that on record. That's the time where you need to really pass into crisis mode. Quick crisis checklists, there's few items, but there's many more, but it's just to raise awareness about the question that you should be asking yourself. What do you do with the sock puppets? Do you ditch them or do you let them leave? We found that maybe even after being discovered, letting the sock puppets be alive can be used as a dead mailbox. And we received information from source even after being discovered. How do you handle the situation with the threat actors? Do you try to talk your way out of the situation, or do you just ghost them? How do you communicate with your stakeholders? Do you talk to your communication department saying, hey, we did that, maybe there will be a PR fallout, so you might want to expect this? Is there any action that you want to take to mitigate the situation? And also, is it just the sock puppet that is blown? Is it the operative that is blown, or even the company? That would trigger a lot of other questions and a lot of other actions after that.
So let's get back to our final chapter, the CTI workflow. This is a classic cyber threat intelligence lifecycle, and we need to go into that much detail because we're not going to explain to threat intelligence analysts how to do threat intelligence analysis. But this is more to help you situate the different elements of CyberHUMINT ops that we talked about into the lifecycle. defining the objectives of your ops, setting up the framework, evaluating the risks, and choosing your operator. All of this would be in the direction part. Managing sock puppets, but also doing research on your source and actually engaging with the source to collect intel would be in the collection. Validating your CyberHUMINT with technical findings with other intelligence types, and also anonymizing the results of the intelligence to protect identities of your source and of the operator that would be in processing. Of course, understanding what the intelligence can be actually useful for, such as enhancing incident response and threat detection, as we've mentioned in the great pitch, that would be in the analysis part. And finally, dissemination, you tailor your insights so you can communicate it to different stakeholders. And then in feedback, you evaluate the success of your CyberHUMINT ops and refine the methodologies, refine the process. Speaking a little bit about dissemination, here we give you example of tactical CyberHUMINT. It's actually the template that we are using. And as you can see, there is quite a big chunk of the alert that is dedicated to the context and to the confidence. What we want to reflect here is that CyberHUMINT, intelligence from humans, is interesting, it's cool, it's crunchy, it looks immediately actionable. It's very tempting with this kind of intelligence to jump to conclusions quickly, really. But like with any kind of intelligence, you need to be honest and careful when you analyze it, when you validate it. Evaluate very carefully the trustworthiness of your source and the confidence that you attribute to the intelligence, and be open about it with your stakeholders. Corroborate your human findings with other types of intelligence. And avoid cognitive biases, use strategic intelligence, structured analytical techniques. Sorry, you had great workshops about it, so I'm sure that you will know.
So we've bombarded you with tons of information. We would love to talk about this for a few more hours maybe, but we'll wrap up in a few takeaways. So we need to have a CyberHUMINT activity in an organization to have a clear framework. We are strong on documentation, policies, processes, etc. But if those processes and policies are supported by the right stakeholders, it will really make your job easier because everyone will be aligned on this activity. It will be transparent and it will be less risky for you as an operative. You need also to have careful planning of your operation beforehand. How do you select the source? What are the PIR that you're looking for? There's many goals to be achieved in an operation and you need to define a solid strategy before. And last and maybe the most important is that CyberHUMINT can fill intelligence gaps. With Eliška, we've had tremendous results. We found flawed processes, technical vulnerabilities, maybe even fraud abuse techniques with some threat actors. And it really helped our organization build a more cyber resilient program. Also, and maybe for us, the most important, we've had tons of fun speaking with teenagers online. Okay, that came out wrong. But that's true. We've really had a lot of fun discussing with those people and discussing about what is happening with Eliška to understand the situation. We've spent more hours that we should have not paid, but we had like successes and fun. So we want you to take that with you and start doing HUMINT online. Thank you for listening.